Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Leaks discussion video. Today we're going to be discussing some buffs to lower tier Pokemon coming into Generation 9. So hopefully you all having a good day and hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe for more Pokemon content. The channel's going to be blowing up in Generation 9. I can just see it, We only got 4 days until release and all of these leaks discussion, all of the speculation. I love that start of the generations that I always like that. Generation 8, Generation 7, all of them were pretty cool to discuss all of the new leaks, the new Pokemon, what new Pokemon get. So you're probably wondering before we even started this discussion, what classes as a lower tier Pokemon? Now, I'll explain quickly what classes as a lower tier Pokemon. Something that isn't, in OU is basically a lower tier Pokemon, but I feel like UU and OU are still like higher tiers in terms of, just everything. Like UU is still classed as a lower tier, but at the same time, Mons and UU are still classed as, in inverted commas, good, like in speech marks, they're like known as good, but things as like RU and below are known as like either average or just like shit Mons. So we're going to be looking at all of the returning Pokemon in Generation 9 that are below UU essentially, that get buffs or any new moves that they would like to have in Generation 9. So hopefully you all enjoy that. So let us begin. Alright everybody, so the first Pokemon I want to talk about here is Avalugg. Now Avalugg isn't coming back until Pokemon Home in March 2023, but at the same time Avalugg has some new tools, specifically only one new move to be fair. I mean Tera Blast counts as 2, but everything gets Tera Blast, so I'm not going to really mention like Terastallizing unless it's actually like relevant to the Pokemon at hand. So Icicle Crash, it gets Icicle Crash as an actual solid ice like stab. So like usually Avalugg was running like heavy duty boots, it was running recover, it was running like sturdy recover with boots, it was running spin, body press recover. Obviously Avalugg gonna feel the recovery nerfs, but well, I'm mostly focusing on the buffs that Avalugg has, and then the last move was like it doesn't really have rocks, it was like toxic, but even it's lost toxic now. So Icicle Crash would actually be a solid new last move that Avalugg has at his disposal because of the fact that it didn't really have a solid ice stab before. Like it had icicle spear. Like you can even see the ice type moves that it had. Like it really just didn't have anything to use its actually decent attacking stat of 117. So it had like avalanche, which people actually used, which doubled in power if it got hit, which actually worked for Avalugg since Avalugg is incredibly slow, but at the same time like it's minus priority. And I know Avalugg still isn't outspeeding much, but just having a more reliable stab option. You can also like it has a much better time in Trick Room, for example, like a more offensive Avalugg set with like a choice band, for example. Like if you go choice band like Icicle Crash, I can't spell, god damn I can't spell, and then it actually has good coverage. Ice ground coverage already sorts it out. Icicle Crash, Earthquake, Stone Edge, and then like Gyro Ball, for example, or even Heavy Slam. Like Banded Avalugg is a lot better in terms of just having a reliable ice type stab move that isn't avalanche. So that is nice for Avalugg. Not much else that it has other than like I guess the hail changes that it gets its defense boosted when snow is up now. So that's overall a buff to ice types, but specifically Avalugg it really only got Icicle Crash. Now next Pokemon we have Banette, and Banette is still a shitter regardless of what sort of buffs it gets. Like Banette needs like a overall like but stat change in order to actually be relevant. But it does have Swords Dance now. Now Swords Dance is pretty big for an offensive Pokemon like Banette, despite the fact that it still doesn't really have the most reliable stab option. Like it didn't even get Poltergeist in Generation 8, and Poltergeist is no longer a Mewtwo in Gen 9, so the physical ghost types stocks are down yet again. So Shadow Claw is its best stab move, and like it's gonna lose knockoff because everything lost knockoff. It is not a level up move for Banette, so unless I'm incorrect about that, you can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure knockoff is not a level up move for Banette, so it is gonna lose knockoff. It has Gunk Shot now because Gunk Shot is TM, and it also just had it naturally. So Gunk Shot and then Sucker Punch. Now Banette is looking pretty decent, like maybe like PU or something. Like having SD is nice for a Pokemon that really had no boosting options before and like really couldn't use its attack stat to its fullest potential. But now, you know, 329 times that by 2, 658 attack after +2 is actually kind of insane. So Banette is actually going to be kind of scary, you know, if it gets a Swords Dance up, but it still has many issues such as low speed, hardly any defenses, but at least it has good priority options in Sucker Punch and Shadow Sneak. It doesn't have any fighting coverage, but everything has the potential of terastallizing. So obviously you could forego Gunk Shot for Tera Blast fighting and then change Banette's type into fighting, which could benefit actually, because Ghost Fighting is still just unresisted, other than Hisuian Zoroark, of course, but that one also isn't out until home. So Banette should be chilling, but you won't be seeing this one like anywhere higher than PU probably. Like, it's still a very slow Ghost type. But yeah, Swords Dance is nice to have on it. So next up, Basculin. So Basculin has Wave Crash now, which is obviously was its signature move of Basculegion in Pokemon Legends Arceus, but that move has been freed up for more Pokemon now. So Wave Crash is essentially a water type Flare Blitz, which so basically does 120 base power and also just does a third recoil, which isn't that bad for something like Basculin. It's going to be a menace in the lower tiers. It already was pretty strong when it got Flip Turn from Isle of Armor move tutors and it got banned from PU, stuff like that. So having a really having a stronger move than Liquidation, 120 times 2, that is insane damage. Like, banded Basculin is gonna destroy like anything really. It does lose out on Flip Turn, which is unfortunate, but it still has the likes of Ice Beam, for example. It has it didn't really get anything else other than Wave Crash, but it has Jet and it has you know, whatever you want to run here, Double Edge. It lost superpower, I suppose. But yeah, Basculin is going to be very threatening in the lower tiers, that's for sure. Just having 120 base power adaptability boosted attack with 92 attack in the lower tiers, I can't lie, Basculin is probably getting banned from somewhere sooner or later. But yeah, that is good for Basculin. So Beartic, on the other hand, so Beartic, my favorite ice type Pokemon, if you guys didn't know, has close combat now. And it also has EQ. Now, it was weird how Beartic was a fully evolved Pokemon that seemed like it should have gone EQ, but it didn't have EQ. And Beartic's coverage was really lacking before. Yeah, it really didn't really have much. Like, it did have fighting coverage as superpower, but we all know superpower is vastly inferior to close combat. And it also didn't really have any ground coverage. Now, Beartic is a Slush Rush Pokemon, and especially with the new as I mentioned earlier, ice changes, it means that it gets a defense boost with when snow is up. Now, Beartic has decent bulk for an ice type Pokemon, 95 HP and 18 boost defenses. Especially if you get a defense boost in snow, that means that Beartic is going to have a pretty good time setting up Swords Dance, which is what it really needs, to be honest, to, you know, function on Slush Rush and then Icicle Crash as the last move. So seeing a Beartic running 4 attacks like this with close combat, Earthquake, Swords Dance and Icicle Crash makes Beartic quite threatening in Hail. Now, Beartic is still a very slow Pokemon. You still have to run Jolly Nature to even get to above 200 speed, and then at Hail still outsped by Scarfers that are, I think, base 85 and above. Anything that has 85 base speed or above outspeeds Beartic with a Choice Scarf when it's under snow. But at the same time, this one is still threatening if you don't have speed control like that, especially in the lower tiers. If you're able to, like, because we lost all like Hail setters other than a Bomber Snow. I was gonna make a video on Snow, but a Bomber Snow is really the only like manual Hail setter, and depending on where Beartic lands, it could be in a lower tier than a Bomber Snow. So we'll probably have to rely on something like Snova to set Snow for Beartic in the lower tiers. Then it could kind of pop off, because if you really think about it, the lower tiers will have lower speed tiers on average, so Beartic will have a harder, easier time you know, using its speed tier to its advantage. But in OU, Beartic is probably just going to struggle a little bit, just because base 50 does not cut it even at +2. But either way, having these two new coverage options for Beartic makes it very threatening if it has a Swords Dance up. So overall, Beartic, you know, is liking these new move additions. Now, Cacturne, on the other hand, Cacturne was still a very mid, you know, hazard setting mon even back in Gen 7. But it does have Toxic Spikes in its arsenal now, so that's the only thing Cacturne gets. It's still a very frail Pokemon. There's been so many Grass Dark types now, and Cacturne is still the worst of them, because it just has nothing going for it. It's even worse than Shiftry. and Shift Tree didn't even make it into Gen 9, so that's unfortunate. But Cacturne's going to continue doing the same thing that it's been doing for how long now. It's going to Sucker Punch stuff in the lower tiers because it actually does have a good attack stat. It's going to set up hazards, and that's all Cacturne really does. Now, is it going to become ultra, you know, better in the lower tiers because it has T-Spikes? No, but, you know, it's just a nice option for Cacturne to have. So, yeah, not much else to say regarding that. Carbink, on the other hand, we have Carbink, Spikes Carbink. That's going to be pretty interesting. It was already running Stealth Rock anyway. Stealth Rock Body Press with its massive defense stat of 150. And then its last move was like Moonblast. It ran Toxic, which obviously you can't run in Gen 9 now because there's no transfer moves. So, and Magic Coat also got removed from the game. So that is quite unfortunate for Carbink, to be honest. But it still has Iron Defense, Body Press options. It can still run Moonblast in the last slot. And yeah, just having that extra hazard option makes Carbink a pretty consistent hazard set in the lower tiers now. So Carbink's going to be pretty fun to use, not going to lie. Alright, next up we have Chesnaught. So Chesnaught was a pretty decent Pokemon. I think it was in RU or NU in Generation 7. I can't recall properly, but Chesnaught always had you know, it was a spiker, it had spiky shield, it also had some offensive sets with SD because it actually had a decent attack stat of 107. But now Chesnaught has body press, which is actually pretty needed since it has a massive defense stat of 122. So it has body press now, and it also has CC. So CC Chesnaught is going to be very fun for Swords Dance sets, especially because it actually has decent coverage as well. It has Earthquake and it has good fighting stuff now, especially with close combat. And it has Wood Hammer, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So SD Chesnaught gets a lot better. Defensive Chesnaught also gets a lot better. And it still has spikes and bulletproof. So Chesnaught is going to overall be a pretty solid, like, I'm not gonna predict tiers because again I cannot predict meta trends. I'm not a supercomputer. But yeah, Chesnaught is gonna be a pretty solid lower tier Pokemon, that's for sure. Cresselia on the other hand, Cresselia is a mixed bag in terms of buffs and nerfs. Like, it's one of the few Pokemon that got nerfed, like stat wise. Like, it lost 10 defense and it lost 10 special defense. Because Cresselia for a psychic type is so bulky, like, so they had to kind of nerf it. But it does have Lunar Blessing, which is its new move. I'm pretty sure, to my knowledge, I completely forgot what Lunar Blessing does, to be honest. I can check the document quickly. Lunar Blessing. The user receives a blessing from the crescent move, restoring HP and curing status conditions for itself and allies. So it's basically jungle healing for Cresselia that can also affect allies in a doubles format. So Lunar Blessing, I don't know if it would want to use this over Moonlight, but at the same time, depending on its PP, to be fair, we don't. It has 5 PP, so 8 maximum, I suppose. So it is a worse Moonlight, but it does get rid of, you know, status conditions like Toxic, but it's still less because, you know, Toxic has reduced distribution now. So overall, you'd still probably want to be running Moonlight, but Lunar Blessing is a nice option for doubles, especially for Pokemon that get status. So that's something for Cresselia to have. Unfortunately, it did get nerfed, but Cresselia is still bulky even with 120. This is going to be 110 now, and then this is going to be 120. So, you know, Cress is still incredibly bulky for a Psychic type. Now, onto another Psychic type, actually. We have Delphox. Now, Delphox, you know, has Nasty Plot now, and it also has Focus Blast. Now, this is actually pretty big for a Pokemon that, you know, I mean, Focus Blast isn't, like, it can hit rock types for super effective now. It wasn't really an issue of steel types, because you know Psychic types without Focus Blast, like, struggle to hit steel types. But since Delphox is a fire type, it doesn't have to ever worry about steel types. It was more that rock types would it more like, plus it didn't really have any other boosting options other than Calm Mind and any like bulky rock type, e.g. Tyranitar, probably the biggest Delphox check, you know, kept it in a pack still. So having Focus Blast is going to be big. Having Fire Blast and having Psychic Psyshock, you know. Delphox is pretty solid now, I'm not going to lie. Having that option for Nasty Plot means it's just a lot more immediately threatening. It still has a good speed to 104. And Delphox will actually hit hard after a Nasty Plot. So you can go Boots. or life orb, any offensive item to really help Delphox hit as hard as it can. And it still doesn't really have a useful ability. A magician is still quite niche as hell, so you're still running Blaze. But if you're at +2 and you're like below 33% HP, that Fire Blast is going to be cooking everything. So this is a massive deal for Delphox, especially as like a special attacking psychic type Pokemon that honestly only relied on Calm Mind to really do much. But even Calm Mind Delphox was a bit underwhelming without like Z moves. So, you know, Nasty Plot is going to be good. Nasty Plot is going to be good. Now, Diancie is in, again, the same position as Carbink. Diancie is just the better Carbink, to be fair. But you also have Spikes as well. So, whatever I said for Carbink applies to Diancie as well. Like, it's still going to be running body press. It's still going to have, like, iron defense sets. But on the one hand, you know, Diancie has Diamond Storm, which honestly just doubles its defense half of the time. So, you might not even need iron defense necessarily in some sets. And then you can, like, run Moonblast, which actually hits hard because Diancie has 100 special attack naturally. So yeah, Diancie is just better Carbink, but it does have spikes at its disposal. So you might encounter full move slot syndrome in terms of whether you want spikes or rocks. You want to run Moonblast. You might even run rocks here, but I think Moonblast might be a bit more consistent. It really just depends on the environment that Diancie's in to see whether its last move is customizable or not. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this is the one that I'm probably most excited about, but Shell Smash Drednaw, which is I didn't speak about it in my rain video, which I completely overlooked that this thing now has Shell Smash. But it makes sense now, seeing how a lot of the Water Rock Shell Smashers like Caracosta and Omastar are not in Gen 9, so Drednaw kind of has to take up the mantle as the Shell Smasher. Now, I talked about Drednaw in depth in my rain video. If you haven't seen that, check it out. It's a pretty good video. But I essentially mentioned that Drednaw is going to be one of Rain's best physical sweepers because it has SD. It had SD, but now has Shell Smash, which is basically just better SD, you know. So Drednaw has a massive attack stat of 115. It also has good defense. It has decent bulk on the defensive side, so it's able to at least get up 1 SD and then just start breaking quite efficiently. So yeah, Drednaw is having a very good time even outside of Rain, to be honest. 74 speed with Shell Smash, with Jolly Nature, you get above 500 speed and you're just very powerful after that. Especially if you run White Herb or Life Orb. I would run White Herb so you're less prone to, you know, Breloom Mach Punch. That might kill you regardless. Drednaw still isn't the most bulkiest Pokemon, but at the same time, there's also that. Strong Jaw is nice to take use of your biting moves like Crunch, Ice Fang. I'm pretty sure this thing also has does that Thunder Fang? No, it only has Ice Fang as one of the Fang moves. But Shell Smash, Stone Edge, Liquidation, and then as your last move, you could go Earthquake. I think Earthquake is pretty much better than Fangs unless, you know, I'm missing specific things. But we can even check that later if you want to. But either Earthquake, you can run Terra Blast, Terastallizing the Drednaw while that's still legal. I still think Terastallizing is going to get banned regardless. We'll play around with it a little bit, but we'll all realize that it's broken as hell. So outside of the Terastallizing potential, either Earthquake, Ice Fang, or, you know, Crunch, just any last move, it doesn't really matter as long as you round out your coverage and can hit everything with your 3 attacks. So yeah, overall, Drednaw is getting a really big move in Shell Smash, and it takes a mon that was pretty much untiered to a mon that I don't believe will be untiered this generation whatsoever. Shell Smash is just too big on a Pokemon that has 115 attack. It's pretty much I believe is the strongest Shell Smasher in terms of attack stat, actually. I'll have to double check that quickly. But in terms of attack stat, yeah, Drednaw is the strongest physical Shell Smasher, and we're going to be seeing some massive damage compared to Caracosta, because 115 and 108 is a decent gap, to be fair. It's a decent gap. And you're a lot faster than Caracosta as well, so you're able to outspeed a lot of good Scarfers. So yeah, there's that. Now, Drifblim, on one hand, Drifblim has Air Slash now, which Drifblim honestly struggled to have any special, you know, as you can see, there is no special flying type move here, really, other than Air Cutter, which is pretty bad. It is pretty bad. So having Air Slash now is actually pretty nice for Drifblim. Now, most of Drifblim's sets were like, you know, Strength Sap and whatnot. I think Flare Boost has, you know, a decent niche actually now, because you actually have good dual stabs now. You have Air Slash and you have Shadow Ball. You also have good coverage in T-Bolt, and then you can run like Stramp Sap in the last slot. I do think Flare Boost Drifblim actually has a niche for once in his career. Like, no one really used Flare Boost. I always liked using it in like Gen 7 PU, but at the same time, no one was really on it. But yeah, Drifblim with Flare Boost, I really think this is something to consider in the lower tiers. So having Air Slash rounds up its dual stab, which it really needed. I don't know why I didn't have Air Slash all this time. You know, a freaking Rotom fan has Air Slash, freaking Emolga has Air Slash, man. Like, Drifblim should, you know, have that in theory. Now, Eelektross, I don't know if these are buffs by any means, but at the same time, it does have CC now. It does have Liquidation, and it also has Stomping Tantrum. Now, how much is this really going to affect Eelektross? I mean, the last time we saw Eelektross in Generation 7, it was one of the best Generation 7 PU Pokemon. It ran a pretty solid Assault Vest set with knockoff. It had Volt Switch, it had Giga Drain, and it had Flamethrower. Now, none of those moves really want to be replaced by CC, to be fair. Like, Giga Drain hits, you know, water types, and it was pretty solid against water ground types like Quagsire. Volt Switch is its pivoting move. It did lose knockoff, which is unfortunate, so you could probably fit one of those new moves somewhere, but it's probably even a better move to run on Eelektross. But CC is decent. You could even run U-turn if you don't want to be running a Volt Switch necessarily, but this is all Eelektross really needed. Flamethrower, Giga Drain, and then CC might fit into like some banded offensive sets on Trick Room. Like, Eelektross can actually use Trick Room quite effectively. It has 50 base speed, and in terms of its physical coverage, it actually is pretty decent. You have Wild Charge, you now have CC, so you know you'll probably want to run CC. You have U-turn, and then you have now probably Stomping Tantrum if you want that ground coverage. Because I don't think there's really anything else you want to run on this other than these 4 moves, to be honest. So Stomping Tantrum is going to be pretty nice on like some banded Eelektross set in under Trick Room. So yeah, 361 attack is pretty solid. So yeah, Eelektross is... These buffs aren't like monumental. It's not like Shell Smash Drednaw by any means, but it's just another option that Eelektross has, you know, that could set her apart in the lower tiers in terms of, you know, Trick Room, for example. Now, Espeon on one hand, Espeon has, what does Espeon have now? Power Gem. Now, this isn't anything big for Espeon. It doesn't really have Mystical Fire to hit Steel types, but at the same time, you know, terrestrializing potential into like Tera Blast Fire, for example, could make Espeon quite scary. But nothing has really changed for this Pokemon. I'm surprised they didn't give it Nasty Plot, but I guess they didn't want one of the evolutions to be more cracked than the other ones, because they all generally share the same move pool overall. They have the same moves in Baton Pass, Calm Mind, you know, Magic Coat, for example, Wish as well. They all just share certain moves, so Nasty Plot and Espeon wouldn't really make sense, to be honest. Okay, now I'm going to be talking about another rain one that I just talked about in the last video. I won't spend too long on it because I already talked about Floatzel in some depth in the last video. But someone mentioned in the comments down below that Floatzel has Wave Crash as well, which I didn't notice when I was looking at new move pools. But Wave Crash, I guess, again, it makes physical Floatzel a lot better in rain, but I would still prefer to run like Drednaw under rain, because you know you have a higher attack stat. You also have Shell Smash, which you could theoretically get away with under rain if you set up on a specific Pokemon. Like, there's a lot of defensive Pokemon are a lot more, you know, setup worthy now, because they don't have Toxic, nor do they have Scald to really threaten physical attackers anymore. I guess it's Chilling Water, but at the same time, that's only a -1 attack boost. If you have SD, you still end up with +1 attack. So, you know, Floatzel's pretty good with Wave Crash, I suppose. Even outside of rain, Bulk Up Floatzel was always a set in the lower tiers that it could run, and then having a good move like Wave Crash is going to hit a lot harder, especially if you're running outside of rain. You can run Water Veil, which makes you immune to Will-O-Wisp and Flame Body, so that's nice for Floatzel overall. But still going to be a decent rain Pokemon, and I think it gets a lot. Its physical sets get a lot better in the lower tiers, because Floatzel really stuck to more like special sets, because like Hydro Pump was hitting harder than Waterfall Liquidation. It also had Ice Beam, which was hitting a lot stronger than Ice Punch was, and yeah. But now with Terastallizing potential, you could go Terra Blast Electric again, because I think all these water type attackers that don't have any coverage to hit bulky waters or just other water types in general want to be Terastallizing into the electric type, because you turn into electric type, your only weakness is ground, but at the same time you still get stab water type moves against ground type Pokemon. So any water type would want to Terastallize into electric type. Is probably the best type you could turn into. Now onto Forretress here. Forretress was not in Generation 8, but it is back now with Body Press. Now, like we saw how Torkoal was with Body Press, it has the same exact defense stat. Forretress is going to be a lot less passive. Now, Forretress could get away with not being as passive because it still has 90 base attack. Gyro Balls hit a lot of fast, frail, offensive Pokemon for a lot of damage, but having that option with, in addition with Iron Defense, means that Forretress is going to be a solid win con now. It is faster than Torkoal. It doesn't have as much special defense as Torkoal, but at the same time, it is a Bug Steel type with only one weakness. It doesn't have to run Boots, it can run Leftovers. So overall, Forretress is a better Iron Defense Body Press Pokemon than Torkoal. And I keep bringing up Torkoal like it's a lower tier Pokemon, but if Drought gets banned in a specific tier, you know Torkoal is going to be, you know, running, you know, White Smoke or Shell Armor, so there's that as well. Forretress still has All Hazards, Spikes, Toxic Spikes, and Stealth Rocks. And in terms of that, you probably don't want to be running all three because that's kind of bad. You're probably going to run Rocks and Spike. It also has Rapid Spin. Like, Forretress is very customizable depending on what you want to run. You can run Spin. Spin is a lot more valuable now since default distribution's been gutted. So running a Forretress Spin set would make sense with Stealth Rock and Spikes, and then having Volt Switch, for example. But it could also, you know, just forego Rapid Spin and just go like 2 Hazard Body Press Volt Switch, for example. And Forretress is going to be quite a customizable mon this generation, so I'm happy that it's back. Now onto more pressing matters. We have Gallade, which gets a new ability now called Sharpness, which basically boosts like slicing moves. Now we don't know this amplifying modifier for cutting moves, for example. Like, we don't know the percentage increase. Someone on the Smoke on Discord server said 50%, but the document here hasn't really updated with the exact stats, so I'm not going to straight up say, oh, it's a 50% increase. But if it is a 50% increase, it's better this way, because Gallade now has Sacred Sword, which if it does get a 50% boost to cutting moves like Sacred Sword is going to be a lot better than CC, because it's going to be a lot stronger. 90 times 1.5 is 135 compared to CC's 120. Now, you also have a lot more PP, and Sacred Sword ignores, you know, defense boost. So something like an Iron Defense Pokemon that's setting up, e.g. Corviknight, Gallade could beat that with a +2 Sacred Sword, which is pretty cool. Now, it's a shame that Mega Gallade isn't in Gen 9. Obviously, you would have access to this in Nat Dex, and also Mega Gallade wouldn't have the Sharpness boost because its ability changes. But at the same time, Gallade will appreciate this. It does have Swords Dance now. It also gains Agility. Now, I don't know if you're able to fit both Swords Dance and Agility onto the same set, but if you do go Agility 3 attacks, it could be a solid late game cleaner with a Life Orb set, because Gallade still hits relatively hard with 125 attacks. So overall, this is a pretty good buff to Gallade in general, and I'm happy that it's getting some love in general. So we have a couple more Pokemon to talk about, only 3 more, guys. There is a lot more to talk about, so I'm going to split this video into like 2 or 3 parts, because I know it's going to get a bit long in general, but timestamps will be left if you want to see certain Pokemon. Now, the next one I'm going to talk about now is Gastrodon. Now, Gastrodon now has all hazards, I think, to my knowledge, because I don't know if it gets T-Spikes, but only has Spikes and Stealth Rock. Cool. So it has Spikes and it has Stealth Rock now. It always didn't make sense to me how these were like really solid ground types, particularly the water ground types like Quagsire and Gastrodon, and they didn't get Stealth Rocks. It was so weird to me. Like, there were so many times where I would want to use Quagsire or Gastrodon, and I was like, oh, what should I run as the last move? Oh yeah, these guys should have rocks, right? But at the same time, I was like, cool, these guys don't have rocks, and I'm just like, wow. But finally, they have hazards, particularly Gastrodon now has Spikes, which, frankly, you don't want to be running both of these at the same time, because you only have 2 options. Gastrodon wants Recovery, and it also wants you know, either Earth Power, attacking move. It did want Scald, but obviously Scald is gone, so we're gonna have to do with Chilling Water, for example, or just Earth Power. Frankly, I don't think Chilling Water is really gonna be that good. To be fair, if you wanna drop stats for Gastrodon, particularly from physical attackers, just run Clear Smog. Like, Clear Smog just resets all of the stats instead of just dropping it by measly, you know, one attack stage. Now, it still has Storm Drain, it's still a water immunity, so it's going to be a decent check to things like Basculin and other things. And it can just run Fizz Death now or something. It really just depends on the meta game trends and whatnot. But yeah, having both of these options is pretty nice. If you want to run one of them, I guess you could go Ice Beam or Earth Power in this slot, and then yeah, stuff like that. So Gastrodon is shaping up to be a pretty interesting Pokemon. It's always been a lower tier Pokemon that has had niches in higher tiers. Same with Quagsire. Like their like specific niches that they cover is always something that particular meta and OU or UU would like to have. So Gastrodon is pretty good. Now Glaceon, not the biggest buff, but this mon actually has Calm Mind now, which issue with Glaceon is still an ice type. It still doesn't really have much coverage, but Gen 8 improved its coverage when they gave it Freeze Dry. It still has Ice Beam, and then its Terra Blast potential with Fighting. I think Fighting is probably the best type you could change Glaceon into, because you want to hit Steel type Pokemon for super effective damage, and you either Terra Ground, you Terra Fire, or you Terra Fighting. And Ice Fighting and Ice Ground are pretty solid paired together, but Ice Fighting might be a bit better, so you could go Terra Blast Fighting here. And but yeah, having CM on this Pokemon is not the quickest Pokemon by any means, but somewhere like NU or something, Glaceon, that is able to boost its special attack stat without choice specs would be much appreciated, I'm not gonna lie. And also benefits from, you know, snow changes as well, boosting its defense. It also has Ice Body, which it can heal with, so that's also a niche to be looking out for in the lower tiers. Now, the last Pokemon I'm going to talk about in this video is Grumpig. Now, Grumpig got Nasty Plot in BDSP, and it's carried over into Scarlet and Violet. Now, it's weird how Grumpig never had Nasty Plot in the first place, and there was always a thing where I considered like a lot of the lower tier psychics, they were so close together in viability of how bad they were, but like things were you know, set apart for certain psychic types, for example. So if we look at the RU set here, we have Pokemon like Grumpig, we have Pokemon like Girafarig, but Girafarig has evolution now, so there's less of that. But even now, Grumpig probably has competition with Girafarig, because Girafarig is faster and still has additional normal stab, and you know, has the same exact special attack stat. But what sets Grumpig apart from Girafarig, for example, is its ability Thick Fat, which gives it a fire and ice resistance, which is going to be really helpful in the long run just to improve Grumpig's bulk in general. It also got Earth Power, which is very nice to hit Steel type Pokemon if you don't want to run Focus Blast, and it also has Dazzling Gleam to hit Dark type Pokemon for super effective if you don't want to run Focus Blast. So overall, Grumpig doesn't need Focus Blast anymore necessarily to, you know, hit Steel and Dark type Pokemon. Like, obviously there's a massive power difference between Focus Blast and Earth Power and Dazzling Gleam, but at the same time, if you're worried about accuracy, you can get off a good amount of damage with these at +2, have a Cobble Berry to live like, you know, not even like knock off anymore, like Throat Chop or any dark type move, and then just go for it again. So yeah, Grumpig is pretty well off. So overall, guys, these are some pretty good buffs for certain Pokemon that I just mentioned in this video. Obviously, stuff like Cresselia got nerfed, but yeah, this is only going to be the part 1 of this buffs discussion video for Scarlet and Violet, because there is just too many Pokemon to get through in one video, where the video would probably take like 50 minutes to an hour to, you know, record. So I'm going to separate this video into 2 parts, and hopefully cover the rest of the Pokemon that have some buffs in the next video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon Scarlet and Violet content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.